Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. Couple quick updates. Interesting story on GoLocal this morning about the friction between the Latino community and the Raimondo administration. Reynaldo Almonte of Latino Public Radio really challenged the governor yesterday in the first press conference she's allowed with reporters on her assertions that she's been effective in reaching out to the Latino community. 44% of all those who have contracted the virus are Latino, only 15.9% of the state's population. So almost 3 times as many from an index standpoint. Today's schedule, we're going to go to Zach Levesque in 1 second, but let's just talk about the rest of the schedule. 12 noon, Dr. Michael Fine. He's got some new updates into what's going on in Central Falls and Pawtucket, 2 hotbeds of the coronavirus and 2 predominantly Latino communities. And then at 1 o'clock, the governor will be having her press conference today as it's presently scheduled. The Raimondo administration announced yesterday that they would be reopening restaurants to outdoor seating with a number of significant constraints against them. That'll start next Monday night. We'll see how many restaurants participate in that. And there's still some regulatory issues to work out, outdoor permitting and outdoor serving of alcohol. But let's go to Northpointe, Zach Levesque. Zach, how are we today?
We're doing well. We're doing well. How are you?
Good. I mean, it's looks like the weather's getting a little bit springy finally. Let's talk about the spring. Is the real estate market, the big spring real estate market, changed forever?
That's a really good question. You know, there's so many ways that this really could go. And, you know, with the spring market right now, with the pandemic hitting and it affecting so many different areas of business and the economy, it's impossible to compare this April, this May, this June with last, obviously, because transactions are down. So I guess really the only indicator to see if we have hit a spring market where in normal times, transactions increase in the spring and summer, especially in a seasonal environment like Rhode Island has. The question is, will it start to increase month over month now? Because we cannot compare that to last year because transactions in April were down. We saw 20% or more nationwide. So we really have to look at April, May, and June to see if every month these transactions increase. And that would be an indication of the spring market hitting. But since this situation is so fluid with the coronavirus, we might take a step back month after month. We're really not sure what's going to happen, and we won't be until we actually see those numbers.
Will the real estate firms, the brokerage firms, the residential properties, the larger ones that have already had a technology advantage, they're sophisticated at marketing online already, will they jump up a step because they'll have even a bigger advantage over maybe some of the smaller real estate firms that are a little more mom and pop-ish and hadn't had the opportunity to invest in technology as much as their bigger brother and sister in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And personally, I went to an Inman conference. I don't know if you're familiar with Inman.
Sure.
It's basically your largest real estate tech conference. It's all over the country in different continents. And I was fortunate to go to the New York one about 6 months ago. And it was basically the focus on tech and how tech has already changed real estate and how we're really in the beginning stages of technology affecting real estate. So I think we've seen a lot of trends over the last couple of years. A lot of the larger companies, primarily because of the amount of resources and the amount of employees they have to do this research, there's been a huge injection of capital and resources into tech advancement with real estate. That happened over the last couple of years, and especially now. What's interesting to me is companies are now forced to innovate a lot more quicker than they thought they had to. So I think the big companies now are really paying attention to the behavior of the consumer and how it's affected by the virus, because we're figuring out things in technology that we could do remotely that we never realized. We're looking at a workforce that's working from home. We're looking at closings that really the clients, whether it's a refinance or a purchase, are done through tech. They're e-signed. There's a lot of transactions we're doing which don't even require appraisals. So I think the bigger firms, especially right now, are heavily investing, but they're not just investing blindly. I think this is almost a good litmus test going through this to see exactly what works and what doesn't. And the smart firms are going to pay attention to what happens in the short term, put those investments based upon what they're seeing and the behavior of the consumer, and then take their tech to the next level.
Yeah, you can start to smell it, I think. You're going to see just a transformation on every aspect of the real estate market and in ways we may not even think about how home inspections are done. Listen, for most people, the purchase of a home is the largest investment that they make. It's where they put their money. It's their forced savings. It's ultimately a portion of their retirement funds. And making sure that the process is as buttoned up and also memorialized, and that technology may help memorialize that buying process. Refinancing, listen, your firm does a lot of refinancing. It's a busy time right now. Is the process going faster or slower because of the coronavirus? Is the dependency on getting everything electronic as streamlined as it should be across the whole sort of world of banking and real estate? Or is it just getting up to speed and the process is a little muddy right now, but might be better in a year?
Yeah, well, across the board, and obviously I can only speak really to the operations at Northpointe. I can't speak for other companies out there, but across the board, I would say, especially for us, refinancing is easier now than it was 6 to 8 months ago, primarily because there's been changes to some of the guidelines to allow those drive-by appraisals. In a lot of cases, on many of our transactions, some even purchases, somebody buying a new home, we don't even need appraisals. That's obviously dependent on the specific loan characteristics, the risk of the loan. But I would say it's actually easier to refinance. And the interesting thing to note right now, you've talked about how it is such a good time to refinance because rates have gone down pretty aggressively since the hit of the coronavirus. It's a non-physical process. And in many cases, like I said, we don't need an appraisal. So the refinance process, it's e-signed. The client can send documents via email safely. We have a safe link that they can upload the documents to protect their information and privacy. Really, the only physical aspect of a lot of the closings that we're doing is the actual loan closing where they're signing the documents. The attorneys, some of the attorneys that we work with, most of the attorneys around the state are having a process where they can have the client come in. They're sitting 6 feet away at the table to sign documents. A lot of attorneys will actually come out to the client's home so that they're comfortable. They don't even have to leave the home. They can sign the documents here in front of the attorney. It can get notarized. So the process actually is easier. And, if I was out there and I had an ability to save money and I was thinking that I'm putting myself at risk or my family at risk potentially with this virus, I would call a lender and ask them their process, call Northpointe, hopefully call Northpointe, but we'll walk you through the process. And there's really not much heavy lifting. And with the safeguards in place, they can feel comfortable that they can do this transaction and not put themselves or their family at risk.
Are the cities and towns stepping up? Are they getting smarter at electronic filings, or is it still the antiquated city halls and town halls across Rhode Island?
You use my favorite word, antiquated, and I'm very mad about that. I'm still going to use it. So one of my favorite words. So as we all know, so many of the towns had that antiquated technology. A lot of the towns have streamlined over the past couple of years. I think that this is more of a forced hand, and there are a lot of the towns that have not stepped up to the plate are going to realize, the abilities that other municipalities have to make it more streamlined, to make it more efficient. We haven't seen too many issues with title owners because, when you do a refinance or a purchase, the client chooses an attorney, they do a title search. Most of them are online. If they're not, there's specific hours where the title abstract searcher can go down and request a title. So we've seen some slowing a little bit on the title side, but there's nothing really in place right now, especially in Rhode Island, that's going to prevent you from consummating a transaction with real estate.
spring has sprung. Are you seeing anything on your volume, any trends to say, this is what I think the summer's going to look like? Listen, nobody can predict the fall. We have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. But are you seeing any data that's starting to make you believe this is going to be a tough summer, or this might not be as bad as we thought it might be?
Well, good question. If you would rewind my interview probably 45 days ago, you would hear me potentially saying that June to August was going to be unprecedented as far as a drop in transactions with purchases. I'm not saying that that will not happen in the future, but I'm starting to move away a little bit from that thought, because we're starting to see activity pick up right now. And we're about a third of the way through May. Usually the spring market does hit April, May, depending on weather, depending on how aggressive the winter was, depending on the economy. But I do see an uptick for sure in May and June transactions. The question is, how much of a fall off will it be from last year? And I think probably the biggest question is what's going to happen to inventory. We commented a couple weeks ago about the inventory, or last week about Rhode Island inventory and how it's lower than the year preceding. This was no surprise. But the question is, are there going to be a lot more new properties come to market and be offered for sale? Because our inventory is almost at historic lows in Rhode Island over the last decade. And the lower the inventory, the tougher it is for somebody to find a house, which will force transactions down. And I think that has to do with when you list a house, you want to meet a couple of realtors. You don't just want to talk to one person. And you have to usually physically show the realtor the house, go over documents. So I think that's one of the issues in keeping inventory low. I think because of the low inventory, there's aggressive buyer actions, and we're seeing that now. There's a lot of realtor partners that I know that have had to stage open houses, and they're only letting a couple people in at the same time, but they have multiple people waiting outside. Because I think, we've talked about it before, there is a need for a purchase.
Yeah.
Usually people don't need to refinance. You can save money. You don't need to. You don't have to. With a purchase, usually there's a reason for it. You're relocating. You're upgrading. You're downgrading. You had another family member. You need an extra bedroom. So I think the large question is what really happens to inventory. But I can tell you from what I'm seeing, properties that are listed right now and priced correctly are not sitting around. They're moving very quickly.
Yeah, I bet. Zach, you get the last word. What do people need to know?
People need to know that, on the finance and the mortgage side, if you are interested in either a purchase or a refinance, it is safe to do that. And lenders like us that are efficient can get you through that transaction pretty quickly. I am seeing signs of the market definitely improving as far as real estate. Like you said, the spring market, I wouldn't say it has sprung, but we're seeing an increase in transactions. This is a fluid market, and obviously a lot of this, if not all of this, is dependent upon what happens with the reopening of states. If we see another drop as far as coronavirus cases going up, but again, let's stay positive. Let's listen to the people that we put in office, hopefully, and we'll get out of this soon enough.
Thank you, sir. As always, greatly appreciate it and appreciate the insights for everybody who's a homeowner or looking to become a homeowner. Good data and good information on a weekly basis from Zach at Northpointe. For everybody else, we'll see you back at 12 noon with Dr. Michael Fine, and we'll have Governor Raimondo's press conference today at 1 o'clock. Stay tuned for some other updates. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the weather and stay safe. Thank you.